Consider maybe 3 minutes, but if you want the full 5 minutes, you're entitled to that. And we'll just see how the day goes. I know, as Councilman Cleveland said, we do have a council meeting at 7 p.m. It should be stated that this date and time was kind of picked because we felt that more people could come after work hours than during the normal working day when hearings are usually held. So that's why we're holding it today. So if we could have Sally Hanley. Oh, yeah, we'll get there. Yeah, Sally Hanley, just in a minute. And then what we'll do is I'm literally going over the lists right now, and we're going to ask for all of them. I get the first page. But we'll be judicious in terms of trying to flesh out residents of the city, organizations, and non-residents. And we're going to try to accommodate everybody, as many people as we can this evening. So without further ado, Sally, please.
Hi, my name is Sally Hanley, and I'm a representative of the Ohio Move to Amend Network. And I'm going to give a brief introduction and then talk about the progress of the Move to Amend up to this date. As far back as the 19th century in the United States, big corporations have been using their money and power to overcome various constraints placed on them by law. Back in the 19th century, the railroad corporations became really large and started chafing under the restrictions put on them. They had a charter from the state, and they used to have to follow a lot of regulations and things like that. However, over time, the courts granted them various protections that used to just belong to real people. Over time, the courts granted them personhood status and the protections of the First, Fourth, Fifth, and 14th Amendments, as well as the Commerce Clause. The founders of our country, of course, meant these only for real people. In 2010, the infamous Citizens United case held that corporations have First Amendment rights to free speech and to spend unlimited amounts of money to support it or oppose candidates for elected office. More than ever, our elections are awash in money. Those with the most money have the most speech. And now everyone who wants to run for office has to spend most of their time just raising money instead of doing what we elected them to do. The Move to Amend arose as a grassroots movement to combat this usurpation of our democracy. There's a groundswell of people of all political persuasions that have joined the Move to Amend to organize campaigns to get resolutions and ordinances passed at their local level, like Cleveland Heights did in 2013 and Cleveland did in 2016, telling their federal and state leaders that they want an amendment to the U.S. Constitution. I'm going to give a status of what's happening across the country. Over 500, mostly municipalities, and 5 states have already passed resolutions or ordinances saying that they want a constitutional amendment. In Ohio, there are 23 that have done this, including, of course, Cleveland. Others in our area are Brecksville, Mentor, Newburgh Heights, Kent, Lakewood, Oberlin, Chagrin Falls, and most recently, in 2016, in addition to Cleveland, are Shaker Heights, South Euclid, and Oakwood. And I understand that University Heights is gearing up for a campaign. This is really important because obviously it really increases our power when we are asking for this amendment. If there's not just an isolated community, but a number of communities that can band together. At the state level, besides just the municipal level, there was a news conference held by 2 Ohio representatives, Nikki Antonio and Kent Smith, announcing that they're sponsoring a bill at the Ohio level. And from the Ohio Senate, Mike Skindell announced that he introduced one in the Ohio Senate. Since that time, 11 more co-sponsors have gotten on board. So things are also happening at the state level. And I'm really happy to say that at the federal level, the We the People Amendment, which is House Joint Resolution 48, was first introduced in the 114th Congress and has been introduced in this one, the 115th, as well, where it now has 38 co-sponsors, including our own Representative Marcia Fudge. So you can see that this movement is growing. Now more than ever, we need to get active. We've taken many steps back since this last election. The swamp, which was supposed to be cleared, has never been swampier. One of the things that I want to mention is that not only governments can pass resolutions and let their representatives know what they want, but many church groups, political groups, peace groups, all kinds of groups are letting their representatives know that they want to get an amendment to the Constitution. So please get active with whatever group you're in and keep up the good fight. Thank you.
Steve Halecko, please. And then can we have Robin Brown sit here as well? Steve, you're next, please.
This one, Brian?
Yes, that's fine. And Robin, come on up. You can sit next to him. You'll be after him. Please, Steve, go ahead.
My name's Steve Halecko. I'm the political director of the Cuyahoga County Progressive Caucus, and I'm here today testifying on behalf of our just under 700 members who are Cleveland residents. The influence of money in politics, as Sally said, has been with us throughout our history. And the cloud that comes with the influence of money in politics has also been with us. This cloud has gotten darker and darker since Citizens United was passed a few years ago. But the move to amend movements across the country, including the one in Cleveland, is a nice sign that maybe the clouds are beginning to break. But yet the cloud is still with us. This cloud exists for all political candidates who are running for office, whether it be in a very small suburban community, a municipality like Cleveland, at the state level, and at the national level. And this cloud gets darker and darker the higher up you go. Folks who are running for office this year, including the members of City Council seeking re-election, I feel sorry for you for what you're having to deal with. I've run for office myself. You have to calculate what your constituents want, what your constituents need, and a message that you have to craft to get them to vote for you. But you also have to calculate resources. Resources usually translates into money. Even if you have a lot of people working for you, that term means money. And you have to balance the two. You have to balance, say you're running for city council and somebody comes to you and they want a zoning favor. And maybe that zoning favor comes with a campaign contribution. Or maybe a large developer comes to you for a bigger favor, and that favor comes with the campaign contribution. Does that balance with the needs of your constituents? The Q renovation vote a couple weeks ago came with a very, very dark cloud. The cloud was in the form of Dan Gilbert's billions and the amount of money he contributes to political campaigns. The cloud was in the form of the Greater Cleveland Partners and their influence on the building committee. And the cloud was in a darker form that no one could even see or even see through. I wish all 17 members of council were here today, but maybe I can ask the two that are. And maybe the 17 or the 15 others could answer this question. Could you please lift that cloud and unequivocally say that the influence of money in politics had nothing to do with my vote on the Q renovations, or at least explain why you can't make that statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Robin Brown, please. And then can we have David Patterson come up, please, and then sit next to Robin? Robin, please.
Good evening, Council. Good evening, everyone. My name is Robin Brown, and I have been a resident here in Cleveland for 52 years, which is all of my life. But I have lived in the southeast side of Cleveland for over 35 years, and I call that particular neighborhood because it's mine. I'm proud of it. I love it. I'm an advocate. As such as all of you all here advocate for the communities you live in. You want to see it better. You want to see it good. Well, one issue I'm bringing back to the table that has seemed to disappear, but it never went away, and that's housing foreclosures. I'm in the middle of a housing foreclosure, and I'm not going to make this personal because I'm not by myself. It's many people that are going through fraudulent housing foreclosures. The right party of interest are not showing the proper documentation. They are not having representatives there. And for a person of my nature, I'm totally disabled. And I had a hardship of a divorce taking $45,000 out my household. And I was requesting assistance from the banks, from what the federal government ruled that the banks were supposed to do, help the residents remain in their homes because of the crisis that you brought. Not the victims, which I consider myself a victim, and the other residents too. But where the problem is our homes are being taken away from us, which then take the taxes out of our community. As you see, we have been losing taxes since our foreclosure crisis. Look at our neighborhoods. Look at our communities. Where are we going? Where are we headed? What are they going to be like? Because right now, until council, judges, people of power to be, the mayor, the city, take a hold to the interest of this entity in place of moratorium on foreclosures from this day forth, also not using the Patterson case as the structure and overturning and stripping from the Ohio law the city mortgage versus Patterson due to its discriminatory nature and violation of the federal preemption doctrine. It is also violates other federal and state statutes, the federal consent decree, and the U.S. Supreme Court decision in the case of Carpenter and Logan. We have a problem here. I can lose my home. I have already paid for triple time. I have paid over $254,000 for a home that I still have 15 years to pay for. And yet, they could take it from me and sell it for $15,000 because the housing sales in the southeast side of Cleveland and throughout Cleveland could only be sold for a fourth of the cost. People have had their homes bought for $1, and then their family is stripped out. That's causing homelessness. It's causing a lot of the vacant properties that are now drug trafficking houses, as well as homes for bodies who have either overdosed or been placed there. I have kids walking around these abandoned homes telling me how many bodies they could see before they get to their house. These vacant properties, which should be housing the families that were placed out of there because no one's following how these courts are upholding the federal law. The ODJ has a report stating what they found the banks doing to the constituents such as myself and others. Can I get help? No. I contact legal aid. They only have 6 to 8 attorneys to help with foreclosure. It's been said that we don't have a foreclosure crisis in Cuyahoga County, in Cleveland. We know that's not true. We know that we were the highest. So right now, asking for the moratorium on all foreclosures and the overturning of the Patterson City Bank decision is a must, as well as a stay on mines so they won't be putting me out my house.
Thank you very much, Robin. Next, we'll have David Patterson. And Robin, I appreciate the testimony in the foreclosure crisis is very real relative to the impact of the city. And this is not directed directly at you about it, but in general, let's try to stick with specific, the specific issues of money and corporate interest. And that was very related, I know.
Dave will follow up with
Right. And yes, and David will, and the purpose of the meeting's on the board, so I don't need to repeat that. And again, we appreciate the comments because that's been a big problem in corporate banks, and CEOs have gotten away with it all. So I appreciate that. David, please.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate this forum. I think this is very much needed, and there are many dynamics to this. This is what I consider a multi-headed hydra. But from my perspective, there's no event in recent history that really epitomizes the money is speech argument more than the mortgage meltdown of 2008. And not just because of my family's battle, an ongoing battle with fraud and fraudulent foreclosure, which should have been overturned by the Deutsche Bank National Trust versus Holden decision in July of 2016 by the Ohio Supreme Court, but because foreclosure is unquestionably a national travesty. This is what we're dealing with in this country. I would just like to read this coda that I prepared so that I could encapsulate what I need to say here so that we could just move forward.
David, pull the mic right up to yourself because
sure.
we're recording this as
Okay,
well.
thank you. And the coda reads as such. The facts reveal that the Ohio 8th District Court of Appeals was duplicitous on numerous levels with respect to its foreclosure decision in the matter of City Mortgage versus Patterson, which established toxic case precedent, case number 98360 of the Ohio 8th District Appellate Court, December 13th of 2012. First, it cited the case of Federal Home Loan versus Schwartzwald as its justification for Patterson, ruling that because Federal Home Loan owned neither the Schwartzwald's note or mortgage, the High Court must have been inferring that had FHL owned either, they would have had standing to foreclose. The 8th stated, based on our interpretation of Schwartzwald, the fact that City Mortgage was not assigned the mortgage until September 29th of 2006 and did not record the assignment with the Cuyahoga County Recorder until October 13th, 2006, does not preclude a finding of standing. See Patterson at paragraph 22. They used this flawed logic to deceptively extend the limitations of their holdings in Wells Fargo versus Jordan, allowing Citi to prevail in Patterson without the ownership of the mortgage at filing. Citi's claim to own the note was also based on fraudulent documentation, and that's according to the court transcript CVO 6-601901. It should also be noted that City Mortgage filed this action on September 20th, 2006, and both the trial and appellate court concurred that City Mortgage did not own the mortgage at filing. This was a violation of the precedent in Jordan, which was case precedent until the 8th's misapplication of Schwartzwald created the Patterson verdict. Conversely, in another case heard by the 8th District and journalized the same day as Patterson, the 8th concluded that David is correct, that the party filing a foreclosure action must own the mortgage. David versus Sensenbrenner, 98636, Ohio 8th District. Secondly, the same case law Schwartzwald utilized by the 8th to remove the mandate to own the mortgage at filing in Patterson was shockingly used by the 8th to stress the obligation to own the mortgage at filing in Davitt. Attorney John Wood conveyed to Attorney Grace Doberdruck subsequent to Mark Dan's 2012 suspension, effectively removing him from this case, that an in-bank hearing should have been requested to certify this conflict. According to Wood, Doberdruck never responded to his letter, and upon reinstatement, Dan was asked why an in-bank was never requested. Dan's response was it would have been pointless, as the 8th never changes its mind. It is therefore more than reasonable to conclude that had the 8th District simply inquired about the OSC's intent with respect to Schwartzwald in 2012, rather than abysmally misinterpreting the High Court's findings, many homeowners such as ourselves would have been spared this painful, resource-depleting miscarriage of justice, especially in light of the Ohio Supreme Court's July 2016 ruling in the Deutsche Bank National Trust Company versus Holden decision. The Holden Court was clear that the interpretation by the 8th District and others relative to the note or mortgage wording in Schwartzwald was incorrect. And the 2012 ruling was never intended by the Ohio Supreme Court to define the requisites of standing. We were and are the holder in due course to the estate in question, 1890 66th Street, and it is clear the Holden Court's articulated position in July 2016 on Schwartzwald is exactly the same as the OSC's position was in 2012. As a result, the 8th's 2012 ruling in Patterson, absent the appellate court's commitment to due diligence in discovering what the Ohio Supreme Court actually intended with regard to the application of Schwartzwald, needlessly put our family and others in the state of Ohio in harm's way. Finally, Patterson violated both established law in Ohio and the Supremacy Clause, Article 6, Clause 2 of the Constitution, which mandates that federal law supersede state law. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. If I could have Lois Romanoff next, and then Marva Patterson come up as well. Again, speak right into the microphone, please.
Hello, everybody. This is a special day for us. I'm Lois Romanoff. I'm the co-chair of Move to Amend, Cleveland. I'm going to talk about the privatization of the public schools, which have become a very serious problem in Ohio and beyond. The front page headline of yesterday's paper, The Plain Dealer, read, "Do Charters Drain Public Funds?" And there were two sub-headlines. Numbers often say yes, and many oppose the system, and charter schools want to see funding equity. Taxpayer money is being taken out of the traditional public school district education budget to pay for charter schools and for vouchers. And for the most part, the public is not aware that their tax dollars are being spent, not only for the public schools in their communities, but also for the charter schools and vouchers. The Cleveland Municipal School District loses $150 million every year to charter schools and vouchers. There are about 400 charters in Ohio. 3 out of 4 of them are failing. Charter schools call themselves public community schools, but they are only public because they are using taxpayers' funds.
That's so close. That's perfect like that.
Okay, I could tell it was
That's good, yeah.
revive or something. Charters are spending millions on advertising. Their teachers get paid 40 to 50% less than public school teachers. They don't need to follow 150 rules that the public schools have to follow. They have boards that are not elected by the public, and they're not accountable to the public. Last year, the National Labor Relations Board ruled that charters are not public schools, but rather private corporations, unconstitutional because of not following various regulations. Charters are a Wall Street growth industry. Hedge fund managers and bankers have figured out that there is a lot of money to be made in the charter industry, $1 billion annually in Ohio. and especially in Ohio because our state legislature, which has written a guaranteed annual rate of return on this money. Now, charters, I said, are corporations. They are not public institutions. They don't foster democratic principles of including all children who come to their doors or matter what their circumstances are, no matter what their circumstances are, as the public system has to do. One of the biggest problems, actually, with charters is the fact that all over the country, in addition to Ohio and Cleveland, one of the biggest problems is segregation. Because what one finds is that charters are either mostly white, or they are mostly dark or brown-skinned, but not integrated. The breakthrough charters in Cleveland are doing very well. However, there is a selection process, a cherry picking that takes place in many different ways. Homework contracts, interviews, past performances, behavior applications must be written, and a lot more. About 30% of the charter schools in Ohio are for-profit. Those schools are generally owned by two entrepreneurs, David Brennan of White Hat Management, who owns Hope Academies and Life Skills Schools, and William Lauger, who owns ECOT, the Electronic Classroom of Tomorrow. David Brennan schools have a graduation rate of about 10%. William Lauger schools have a graduation rate of about 35%. The Cleveland Public Schools have a graduation rate of 69%. How can they get away with this? Between the two of them, Lauger and Brennan have given more than $6 million to members of the state legislature and to members of the Ohio Supreme Court. This is legal because it is equivalent to speech from the Buckley versus Vallejo decision, which was made in, I'm distracted by the card. Buckley versus Vallejo was a Supreme Court decision of '76, which said that money is the same as speech. Well, of course, money is not speech, money is property. But that decision, along with the Citizens United decision, which gave corporations unlimited amounts of money to give to political pacts, is what is causing a great deal of these problems. So I'm just wanting you to know how corporate personhood works, and hope that you will join our bandwagon. As far as charters are concerned, many of us hope that if the legislature wants charters, that's fine, no problem, just not out of the public school funds. Thanks.
Thank you, Lois. And for those who we call up, I would like to call up Eileen Hamilton as well, please. And for those who are coming up, you should know we have a 2.5 and a 4.5 minute reminder and then a time. It's just, we don't want to freak you out, but it's just to help us move things along. So thank you very much. Marva, please. Marva Patterson.
Yes, hi. My name is Marva Patterson. I am a Christian community activist, and I am also a member of Move to Amend. I am so grateful to be here today because we do have an opportunity to voice our concerns. Because when I look at Cleveland, I don't see us involved. I don't see an influence of the people in the decision-making. And I am here also to discuss these fraudulent foreclosures as well, because it is a blight on this city. On Friday, March 18th of 2016, Frank Ford, Senior Policy Analyst for Western Reserve Land Conservatory, issued his report, "Is Cuyahoga County Foreclosure Crisis Over?" And also the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency in Washington, D.C., Foreclosure-Related Consent Order Status Report observations, payments, and foreclosure prevention assistance as of April 2014, meaning our federal government determined that there was monies allocated to homeowners to save your properties, not move you toward foreclosure. There was monies there to ensure that you had modifications or quiet titles, depending on the status of your foreclosure. As of on Friday, March 18th of 2016, Frank Ford, as the Cuyahoga County foreclosure crisis, again, is over? No. According to the study, vacant properties have cost the county $52,644,458 in uncollected property tax. Although foreclosure filings have come down, the foreclosure crisis cannot be deemed over. While significant portions of the county continue to be burdened with high concentrations of vacant and blighted homes, the study also discussed how mortgage foreclosures nearly doubled in Cuyahoga County between 1995 and 2000, and quadrupled between 1995 and 2005. Now, I don't want to continue because David and Robin, they spoke very well, and I do apologize that I was in a car accident, so my voice is a little, sometimes, some days it's stronger, but today it's a little problematic. But the Office of the Comptroller of Currency issued a consent decree to all states to let them know what was happening with foreclosures. Banks were filing fraudulent notes. I don't know how many people in this room know what a launch to note is. Well, these banks were coming into our county stating they were the proper parties in interest, filing fraudulent foreclosure notices, and the courts just allowing these fraudulent notes to go through without any kind of investigation. So what we are saying today is we are asking City Council to step up. We're asking them for this investigation as well, because they have an opportunity now to go back in and file a lawsuit against the banks. We need additional funds to help run the city. So let's look at the actuality of how many individuals are fraudulently foreclosed on, and we have an opportunity to do this. We know of many cases currently in the court system and outside the court system that's already decisions been rendered that were fraudulently foreclosed on. So we're saying now we have an opportunity to do this. The United States, I'm sorry, I apologize for that. We just had a decision May 1st that granted the opportunities for cities to go back in. So I believe right now we need to do this. So I'm saying for a city council that's responsible for the citizens here, please examine this and let's go back in. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If we could have, Eileen, you're next. If we can have Greg Coleridge come up then as well to be after Eileen, please. Eileen, go ahead, please.
My fellow Clevelanders, as you examine the impact on our city, our state, and our nation of political influence by corporate entities and big money, ask yourselves, why are we Americans paying twice as much for our health care as people in other developed countries? One of the prime factors is the huge increase in America in the cost of some must-have prescription drugs. Insulin is a notorious example, as are EpiPens by the drug company Mylan. Another factor is the expensive effect on our insurance premiums and the limiting effect on our health care choices caused by the withdrawal from the health care exchanges of big health insurers like Aetna. A recent review by Consumers Union, an arm of Consumers Report, names unit pricing of drugs, procedures, and facilities as the #1 factor for the high costs of our health care. In other words, drug companies, insurance companies, and other health care providers have the market power to charge as much as they can per unit, because they can. In short, Mylan and Aetna and other corporations in the healthcare industry are doing precisely what they are designed and expected to do: maximize profits and return dividends to their shareholders. It wasn't always like this. Back in the 1960s, a commonly held belief was that the private insurance industry, then mostly nonprofit, would adapt to the changing medical economy and cover everyone within 10 years. In the 1980s, however, there was a fundamental shift in the healthcare industry. It changed from nonprofits to investor-owned health corporations, causing a fundamental shift in the attitude toward healthcare. Healthcare became a commodity for those who could pay. The fertile field of consumers for this profitable commodity became us, the patients. However, is health care an optional commodity to be traded to those who have enough money to partake in the market? Or is health care fundamentally needed to sustain human life? Do we Americans not have a right to life beyond the womb? Do we not have a right and responsibility to provide ourselves with health care needed to sustain our lives? Yet, that right is often denied when we are financially unable to adequately partake in the market to meet that responsibility due to skyrocketing insurance premiums, deductibles, and copays and prescription prices. So, we are forced to forego the health care that sustains and protects our lives that our government protects militarily with trillions of our tax dollars annually. Yet, sustaining our American lives with universal, nonprofit, single-payer health care, called the public option, or Medicare for All, is disparagingly called socialism by proponents who profit politically or financially from free market, investor-owned, for-profit health corporations. Focusing our attention on the profiteering of individual health corporations like Mylan and Aetna distracts us from the root cause of the problem, the market itself. Free market extremism is deeply destructive and deadly ideology. For example, in 2009, some 45,000 people died from lack of health insurance and health care. Even if that number has declined under Obamacare, the health insurance market still kills vastly more people than many other ideological threats that loom large in the public consciousness. We see this threat of market extremism in health care legislation that is passed by Congress. When Medicare Part D was passed, its chief architect was Congressman Towson, who enjoyed the benefits of his relationship with Big Pharma Corp. In the form of roughly $1 million in campaign contributions. He was instrumental in making sure the Medicare Part D legislation would not allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices. He was rewarded handsomely with a new job as president and CEO of PharmaCorp. We saw the threat of market extremism in the debate on the ACA, or Obamacare, which spurred the biggest lobbying effort ever. Reports show there were nearly 6 lobbyists for every person in Congress during that debate. The pharmaceutical industry spent $1.4 million daily to protect their corporate interests of market power and profitability. In total, $1.2 billion was spent by insurance companies, hospitals, and other healthcare corporations to influence the debate so as to preserve their market power and kill the public option. And what are the effects of protecting big money corporate interests over the essential needs of living, breathing human beings? Number 1, great inefficiency and waste. Number 2, a loss of primary care doctors, family practice doctors, gynecologists, and geriatricians. Number 3, patients are not filling prescriptions and are refusing needed treatments and tests in order to avoid debt. High levels of medical debt cause 62% of personal bankruptcies in America, with most of those declaring bankruptcy actually having insurance at the time of the illness. In the months of legislative debate ahead of us, urge your senators and Congress members to support the single-payer public option, House Bill number 676, and to get big money out of our health care, and to back House Joint Resolution 48, sponsor or co-sponsor it to pass the We the People Amendment in the United States.
Great, thank you very much. Before Greg speaks, I also want to ask Elizabeth Shiro up, please, Elizabeth. And then for those who are going to speak, and if you didn't notice, we do have water in some cups. So if you're going to speak and you're getting a little dry because it's kind of warm in here, feel free to get some water before you come on up. And we have Greg Coleridge. Please, Greg.
So I hear that the basketball team in town is doing pretty well. Heard that? And that it's not very much competition, in fact. And that for the benefit of fans and just the league in general, we need a little evenness. So the refs might, start calling games that are a little prejudicial against the Cavs in the next round. Or the league itself might decide that, maybe the Cavs should only have, say, 4 players out on the court instead of 5. If that doesn't work, which maybe even with 4 players, the Cavs will do well. That they'll say the league will raise the basket level from 10 feet to 11 feet. Maybe they'll shrink the basket size from whatever the diameter is, a couple of inches. Maybe they'll just come up with some other things like, forcing the Cavs players to shoot with their opposite hand. Maybe that'll work. The idea being that if they change not just the players of the game, which they can't really do, or change the plays of the game through refereeing, they can try to even things up and make things more fair or unfair to the other team if they change the rules of the game. And that's what wealthy individuals and corporations have been doing for more than a century, to our detriment. They've been changing the rules of the game via altering the Constitution of the United States, via amending it by these unelected, for-lifer, oftentimes corporate attorneys, railroad attorneys, for starters, and ever since other attorneys, who, once they get on the court, they're impenetrable, and they know where their meal ticket came from. They vote for the corporations, and give them never intended, inalienable constitutional rights, and then come up with this bizarre notion that money is speech. Collectively, when you combine the two, it's been devastating to you and I, and to those who have come before us, and to our communities, to our neighborhoods, to the world, and to the natural world. And it's getting worse by the day, by the minute. And it's going to continue to get worse unless we change the rules of the game. You've already heard examples of some of these problems where the rules of the game are stacked or fixed against you and I and our brothers and sisters, whether it's the fire industry, finance, insurance, and real estate that are among the largest investors, not contributors, but investors in our political system that have resulted in the end of laws and rules like the Glass-Steagall Act and others that have resulted in the speculation that has led to the home foreclosure crisis. It is the pharmaceutical corporations and the insurance corporations that have, to their own benefit, and that have done so very well for their stockholders, their shareholders, and their CEOs, but have created not just a sick democracy, but a sick public. And it's getting worse. And in the education system, it's the individuals like the Dave Brennans and the William Lagers that are corrupting and perverting what is left of the education system. And this is going to continue to get worse unless, on many other fronts, unless we change the rules of the game. And that's what Move to Amend seeks to do, to say that enough, basta, no more. Money is not speech. Corporations are not people. Both are bizarre constitutional constructs that exist only because of these 5 unelected Supreme Court justices that have decided to take democratic matters into their own hands and have corrupted, have perverted, have hijacked what little is left of our democracy. And it is up to us, you and I, through forums like this, and thanks to those of you in the city of Cleveland, to the 22 other communities in Ohio that have taken a stand via either resolutions or initiatives, and to the hundreds of communities around the country that have said, you know what, democracy is not a noun, it's a verb. We got to make it work, make it real, and that's what this event is all about. Let's keep it up. Woo. Woo.
So real quick, so I just want to draw attention. David Lima probably wonders why we skipped him. Patricia Denny, Ann Corso, and Nina McLellan. You're not Cleveland residents, so we're going to hold you. But we do have more time, though, so we'll see. Right now, we're going to have Elizabeth Shears. We would ask Satinder Puri to come up, and then Mark Bilko after that. Satinder, do you want to come up and wait your turn? Please.
Well, first
Elizabeth.
let me say I'm really bummed that I have to follow Greg. Because, I couldn't match that. But I'm actually here to talk about something so local but so important to the people of the city of Cleveland. It's the way that local businesses, developers, and corporations have garnered undue political influence with the city government in the last 10 to 15 years. I was born and raised in Cleveland. I have lived on the near west side of Cleveland for almost 30 years. And the near west side is so pressed and pushed and pulled by development, by bars that are built for people who don't live in the city. They get preferential treatment from the zoning board, from the council people, from everyone in the city. They use their money as a voice to speak over the people who live in the neighborhoods. But my biggest concern right now is what's going on in West 25th. Now, the West Side Market is, to me, frankly, the only city service that actually works and has been working without any interference for the last almost 100 years. But in the last 10 years, because of the development of the restaurants in the neighborhood, who have pushed and pulled at the city council, who have gotten just outlandish influence, I'm assuming using their money with the city government, what they have done is they're pushing out vendors at the market. The city, I'm a fourth-generation market shopper, and I've never seen it so poorly managed. This is a place where one person on a limited income can spend $10 and get all the fruits and vegetables they need to survive for that week. You cannot do that at a grocery store. This is a place where people have been working for generations to provide quality food at a reasonable price, and they're being driven out. Their rents are going up. Their treatment of the vendors is horrendous. There are vendors that I've known my whole life who are talking about leaving because they can't take it anymore. But here's an example of how I think that these bars, frankly, and some of these businesses in that area have completely taken over the mayor's office and the city council on this issue. The city of Cleveland spent $2.3 million in taxpayer money. That's some of my money, some of everybody else's money here, to rebuild the market parking lot, frankly, to a worse parking lot than it was before, so I'm still confused about exactly what the improvement was. The idea was that the taxpayers were going to get their money back because they were going to charge for parking. Now, last summer, I went to a meeting about the parking lot, and a bunch of people who owned businesses in the neighborhoods, all the bar and restaurant owners showed up and screamed and yelled because they don't think that their patrons who don't live in the city of Cleveland, that their employees, some of who don't live in the city of Cleveland, or that they should have to pay for parking. They don't think that the money that they're making off of these people, the money they're making off of our back, should be recouped by paying a couple of dollars because, they're only making $60 a person for dinner that night. So $2 to $4 is going to break the bank. So what's happening is the city government is allowing and I think in some ways boosting the degradation of the only city service that works. of the only city service I have never had a complaint about. And recently, when I started to consider moving out of the city, the only thing I've thought about as far as distance goes is how long will it take me to get to the market. People need the West Side Market. It's a little tiny issue. It's not health care for the world. It's not, world peace. But it's an issue that poor people, middle income people, anybody can go and get what they need. And decent human beings run businesses in a decent way. And so I am hoping that City Council will really take a step back and pull away from all of the influence of, and we all know who they are, of these restaurants and bars and businesses, and actually consider for once the well-being and the health and welfare of the residents of Cleveland.
Great. Thank you very much, Elizabeth. We have Mark Bickle. Please come on up. And then next, after Mark, will be Rosemary. Satinder, please.
Good evening. My name is Satinder Puri. I'm a community activist, a volunteer teacher, a retired structural engineer, and a resident of Ward 16 on Cleveland's west side. As a community activist, I've been fighting for social justice and issues of vital importance to my community. One does not have to look any further than Cleveland to observe the corrupting influence of the rich and powerful. Washington is corrupt because cities like Cleveland are corrupt. I have 4 cases from my activism that illustrate the corrupting influences in Cleveland, Ohio. There were 2 hunger strikes to protest the corruption. The 4 cases: Save John Marshall High School campaign, Leave Public Square, also known as Jimmy DeMora Public Square because of the corruption, Vote No on the 2015 Art Syntax campaign, and the current No to Corporate Welfare for the billionaire Cavs owner, Yes to Go Cavs campaign. These campaigns illustrate misuse of political power and denial of due process by City Hall, vote rigging at the Cleveland Landmarks Commission meeting of January 12, 2012, role played by the art and architectural critic of the Plain Dealer and the CEO of City Club to shut out the opposition in the 2015 Vote No on the Art Syntax campaign. I was the lone person opposing it. Demonstrating the power of the arts establishment, whose art objects are supposed to elevate us to be better human beings, but who operated, nevertheless, as another corrupt entity. And the power exerted by the billionaire Cavs owner in swaying elected Cleveland City and Cuyahoga County council persons to provide public funds for renovation of the queue, which fortunately is being challenged by a petition process to place the issue for a referendum. I'm submitting a document for the record which contains the details and references. Thank you for your attention.
Great. Thank you very much, Satinder. Can Rosemary Palmer come up, and she's after Mark. Mark, please, if you could say your title.
Yes, thank you for your time today. I'm Mark Milko. I'm the president of Workers United Local 10. I'm also the chairman of the board of the North Shore Federation of Labor. I want to talk about the move to amend today. Since our country was founded, there's always been some type of voter suppression. First, only landowners could vote in this country. The 15th Amendment passed, giving African Americans the right to vote, but following that, poll taxes came to be, and we had to get to the 24th Amendment to do away with that. Citizens United was passed to give corporations the right to be considered citizens, which, as Mr. Coleridge said, is ridiculous. The law also gives unions more flexibility on campaigns, but it is a mere pittance to what giant conglomerates can give. Corporations can bleed ink, but they can't bleed blood. Our view is that corporations can use their influence to suppress citizens' will to vote, and we agreed there needs to be an amendment. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. And Rosemary, before you start, can we have Lynn? There's Lynn Alfred and Bob Hanson. If you're a duo, you're going to take the... Oh, okay, I didn't realize that. Okay, so if we can get Carla Ruttenberg up here as well to go next. And just to let everybody know, in terms of residents, we've got 5 or 6 non-residents, but of the residents list, we're about an hour. We've got about an hour worth of speakers, so we're doing really, really well. Again, you have 5 minutes. If you can shorten it, great. If not, take the full 5. Rosemary, please.
Hi, I'm Rosemary Palmer, speaking for Cleveland Peace Action's Fund Our Communities Coalition. Now, I've never had a desire to be an accountant, so I'm going to be throwing around a lot of big numbers, but, you know, if anybody, you know, it's okay. All right, according to the National Priorities Project, in 2014, the federal government paid an average of $388 per person, or approximately $4.5 billion in Department of Defense contracts in Ohio. And we can contrast that to the federal food stamps, which paid an average of $219 per person, or $2.5 billion statewide. And we understand that the city government doesn't distribute federal funds. However, if we look at the federal funding to the Cleveland 44109 zip code, we can see that the federal government awarded $4,006,548 in contracts, which includes $1.5 billion in EPA funds for the W.C. Reed Playfield and $834,364 for Metro Health Hospital. For the Slavic Village 44127 zip code, we see $500,000 in EPA funds funneled to environmental protection projects. Those projects don't just happen. They require local officials to be made aware of the need and make the requests. So when you're looking at Cleveland needs and contemplating federal funding requests, please remember all of the city's residents and program for those in the poorer areas of the city, and not just for those who can afford to help fund campaigns and who frequent expensive downtown entertainment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rosemary. And if I can call up Daryl Davis, please, is after Ann. Ann, please? Or I'm sorry, Patricia.
So you
Patricia.
called me up, but I'm not a resident.
Oh, Carla. Oh,
I'm not a Cleveland
but you're
resident.
with,
I'm with
you're
Move
with
to
Move to
Amend
Amend. That's
Ohio
why I called you
Network.
up. Yeah.
Okay.
Just for those who know, Move to Amend was primary mover of the petition drive in general. So I'm giving her time mainly because of her participation in the petitioning movement. Please, Carla.
Good afternoon. I'm Carla Rautenberg. I'm with the Move to Amend Ohio Network. I'm on the coordinating committee and work at the state level as well as locally. As everybody here knows, the first three words of the Constitution are "we the people," not we the judges, not we the corporations, or even we the elected officials. In a monarchy, the monarch is sovereign. In a democratic republic, citizens hold the sovereign power. We'd better start acting like it. I wonder how many of us in this room today really believe the people rule. We all understand that obviously corporations are not actual people. Yet since 1886, they have enjoyed something called legal personhood, which is the ability to assert rights under the law. But I will show that legal personhood is completely bogus. The U.S. Constitution states that we the people are free and sovereign, so only we have the power to create government. We may delegate certain tasks to our government, but it must always remain subordinate and accountable to the people. People have rights. Government only has duties. As people, our rights are not subject to the public political process. No public policy or public law can violate any person's private individual constitutional rights. Our founders had experience with the potential for corporate abuse because the English monarchs had handed the charters of several of the colonies to business corporations, and that didn't always go well. Therefore, Therefore, the Constitution very deliberately delegated the power to grant charters of incorporation to the state governments, where theoretically it still resides. Each corporate charter was granted for a specific purpose and a limited period of time, often 20 years. The charter conferred particular advantages to the company, but not rights. If the owners of the corporation wished to change its purpose or extend the life of the charter, they had to ask the state legislature for permission. The consequence for a corporation that violated the terms of its charter was revocation, the unequivocal death of that enterprise. Just imagine. Since that time, various unelected individuals appointed for life to the Supreme Court have interpreted our Constitution mostly to the benefit of the members of their class. That would be the upper one, and often setting dangerously bad precedents. The very concept of legal personhood has been a slippery slope, which only worsened with the Citizens United case in 2010 and several terrible decisions since then. How bad is it? Well, let's put it this way. We have had a distinguished nonprofit corporation purportedly dedicated to protecting the civil liberties of American citizens take donations from the tobacco industry and then go to court to protect said industry's First Amendment free speech rights to advertise a deadly product. This was back in the 1980s and 90s. Then we had the self-same nonprofit corporation filing an amicus brief in support of the Citizens United case. And most Americans who donate to this organization don't know about these things. I speak, of course, of the American Civil Liberties Union. So the rot is indeed very, very deep. Let us all heed the exhortation of the second American president, John Adams, and I quote, "Government is instituted for the common good, for the protection, safety, prosperity, and happiness of the people, and not for the profit, honor, or private interest of any one man, family, or class of men," unquote. That is our challenge as Americans and our birthright. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just want to make note that we're joined by Councilman Jeff Johnson and Councilman Kevin Conwell. If we could have Chris Stocking come on up next to Daryl, and then Gilder Malone will be after Chris. Daryl, please.
Okay.
Daryl Davis.
Yeah, Carla, that was really good because you pointed out the commons. The commons are our wealth. The commons is what the corporations want. They want our water. They want our children. They want our schools. They want control over every part of our life. And so I come from a family where a lot of time was spent reading books and making music. We have no time for that anymore. We're making choices. We have choice. We have to make a choice. Hurry up and do it. We have to make a choice about your health provider. You have to make a choice about your power provider. You have to choose this, choose that. We are consumers. We are no longer citizens. Rise up and say no. Now, I have a granddaughter who's a teacher. She went into this business with the highest expectations, and it has been rotten, just rotten, as long as she was employed by a Constellation school. And they cycle kids in and out. These are kids who don't do well in the public schools, shove them off into a Constellation school. Maybe they'll do better there. They don't do better there because they have inferior equipment, inferior teachers, inferior organization. The administration doesn't work. And so the kids fail again, and they're out of there. And then on a lifetime cycle of no getting better. And this is what the Constellation schools and all those other charter schools do. Fortunately, my granddaughter got out of it. She's in a public school, and she's doing really, really well. And for a young person, a very young person, and I look around the room, and there are not very many young persons here, and they're probably all working their butts off to pay off their student loans. And, right, and so how come it can't be all up to us? This is the most important issue of my life, and I have been working on issues all my life. There is no time to back down. We can't fail. I have an ultimate expression of dissent, and everybody knows this who's ever heard me. Over my dead body. That is the ultimate despair. Can't go worse than that.
Thank you, Daryl. If we can have Gilder Malone, please come up. Gilder Malone. And we have Chris Stocking. Please, Chris, speak into the microphone.
Okay. I wanted to talk about how money in politics affects local issues here in Cleveland. I'm not sure if everyone was aware, but in February of last year, City Council passed ordinance number 10516. This ordinance increased campaign finance limits for City Council as well as the mayor's office. Specifically, individuals donating to the mayor, the cap went up from $1,000 to $5,000, so went up 500%. And this has not been good because the Frank G. Jackson for a Better Cleveland, at the end of 2015, his fund, his reelection fund, had $124,000 in it. Since the new limits took effect, just in 1 year, his fund has grown over 270%. He raised over $212,000 in 1 year. And now he's got over $337,000 total in that fund. So we can see why he's running for re-election, because he has this big chunk of money sitting there, even though if you've listened to him, he might not be the most engaging politician, but he's sure got a lot of money in the bank. And I just wanted to thank the following individuals who donated a maximum amount of $5,000 to Frank Jackson. I wanted to recognize their contribution to democracy in Cleveland. Scott and Adelbert Morris of Morris Construction, Brian, Deborah, Albert, and Audrey Ratner, as well as Sam Miller of Forest City Enterprises, Robert Bowen, and Robert Smith. Thank you all for your $5,000 contributions to Mayor Jackson. There's nothing illegal about this. I want to emphasize that. But what's going on here, there's no quid pro quo, but what this is part of a larger gift economy. So according to Lawrence Lessig, who wrote a book about this, a gift economy is grounded upon relationships and how these relationships grow over time. It cements a relationship and allows undue influence, and politicians feel an obligation when they get that money handed to them. It's not that they're buying a favor, but they feel like, oh, since they donated, I kind of have an obligation to them. You know, even if they don't recognize that, there's studies shown that your mind works that way. So the way that this system continues is that politicians feel dependent upon this money, so that automatically, even though it's not quid pro quo, they're not paying for a favor, they're still going to lean towards people who have donated money, and those people get more influence than the everyday Clevelander. So we have to ask, what is our local government? Is it a republic that we have representatives that represent us, or is it a plutocracy which is ruled by the wealthy few? The increased campaign finance limits were not the only noticeable ordinances that were passed last February. On that same night, February 8th, they also passed an ordinance for the Batchelder Company, a GOP lobbyist firm, for $70,000 to lobby against the minimum wage at the state level. And they crushed the minimum wage. So when we see normal everyday people, we don't see that represented in city council, but as soon as a plutocrat's toes are stepped on, as soon as someone who's wealthy, their toes are stepped on, we see the city of Cleveland going down and lobbying for them. But what are they doing for us? Are they lobbying against bank foreclosures? No. I don't see that money being spent to lobby against banks. I see it lobbied against increasing the minimum wage, and that's disappointing. And what happened later in the year, in December, we passed the ordinance 1015, which was actually this ballot initiative where we got nearly 9,000 signatures to have this Democracy Day and to establish that the people of Cleveland believe that money is not speech and corporations do not have the same rights that people have. That's what we did. We went out and we got nearly 9,000 signatures, and it was going to go on the ballot, but City Council signed it so people didn't have to vote on it, and now we have this hearing. But what I'm upset about is just 2 meetings later, the second meeting in December, what did they do? They passed, again, an extension to that GOP lobbying firm at the state level of $48,000 for 2017. $48,000 in taxpayer money to continue to lobby at the state level against the interests of the people of Cleveland, against the minimum wage and similar issues. So we had at the end of December, through this citizens initiative, that money is not speech and corporations are not people. We established that. We got 9,000 signatures. City Council signed it. And what do? 2 City Council meetings later, send $48,000 to a lobbyist in Columbus. Why? Why you do that? I want to know why. And the other thing that I want to know is that City Council has a leadership fund. I don't know if you're all familiar with this, but it has over $110,000 in it. And they use that money so that they can keep the same people reelected. And if you don't go and vote how the president wants you to vote, because the president is the one that controls the City Council Leadership Fund, if you don't fall in line, then you're not going to get that funding from that City Council Leadership Fund. So we need to change that. What we need is publicly funded elections. We need to dissolve the City Council Leadership Fund and use that money to match small donations for new candidates to run for office so they don't have the influence of the gift economy. So City Council, I look forward to working with you. I don't mean to be hostile. I'm just passionate about the facts. And I look forward to working with you and dissolving the City Council Leadership Fund, establishing publicly funded elections, to stop sending this money to the state against the minimum wage, and to roll back the limits on campaign financing back to $1,000 per person. So we don't have Frank Jackson having over $300,000 in 1 year. That's absurd.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. We're gonna have, if we could have, we're gonna have Gilder up next, and I'd call Lucy, I think it's Lucy Perk, up to sit next to Gilder. She'll be going next. Is there a Lucy? Yeah. Is there a Lucy here? I might not have read the first name right.
First name is Lucy.
Okay. Pat, okay, thank you. Gilder, please.
Hello, my name is Gilda Malone. I'm a community activist. I live in Ward 11. My thoughts are strictly to the councilman, those of you who thought enough of us as citizens to come, is I'm asking for freedom of speech in City Hall. I've asked for it. This is the first time I've seen anything nearly look like it. You can't even come to City Hall at some point with a sign and you will be arrested. You have no rights in City Hall. So I'm asking that the new people who are elected, that they amend that and make it where the citizens can hear what has to go on in City Hall. The other thing is I'm asking the council people to redefine or read what block grant funding means. Block grant, a financial package that gains federal money for state and local government for the use in social welfare programs such as law enforcement, community development, and health services. Block grants provide money for general areas of those things to be improved. I don't see it in many of the communities, even though I live on the west side. My also thought is the limit, the time that council people can serve in City Hall, who are now considered to me our corporation for the city of Cleveland. And to ask you to please learn to give up the law that you have carried for many years, which is called the gentleman's law. Because I haven't seen very many gentlemen who allow their city to go raggedy like you do. Do away with it. Start making council people and ward people accountable for their funding. Right now, council is called Big Business in Cleveland. Let's get back to where I want to go. It's called Grassroots Campaign. Change. Are you all in?
Thank you, Gilda. And before Lucy starts, I'd ask Susan Roseman to please come up as well. Lucy, please. Okay. Lucy Peck. Thank you.
I just want to say, as an individual, I am not affiliated with any organization, but I'm concerned about what's happening in our neighborhoods. The lady that just spoke to the issue of block clubs. You hear about how there is never any money for local programs, never any money for more police, more public transportation, but there's always money for the queue, and there's always money for the big name, shouted out, Cleveland is great sort of thing. And I just would like a 360-degree swivel so that what makes Cleveland really great is the people who pay the taxes, who pay the council's salary. And it seems as if the money is just being frittered away, and where it really needs to go, it is not getting to where it needs to go. So as an individual, that's all I have to say. The other thing I have to say is everybody get out and vote when it's voting time, so that if you have a complaint and you don't vote, it doesn't mean spit. But if you vote, you got to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lucy. Thanks for shortening your time to help others as well. And I'd ask, before Susan begins, for Trudy Hutchinson to come up as well. Okay, Bonnie Sykes then is next. Bonnie Sykes? Okay, Walter Nicholson? No? Okay. And then, so then we can get into David Lima would be next. Please, Susan.
Okay. Hi. Susan Rosman, the Larchmere, Buckeye, Woodhill, Woodland, Shaker Square neighborhood. I've been in Cleveland 20 years now. I moved to Cleveland because I wanted my family to be in a diverse neighborhood. We have so many great things going here, but we don't put the money into promoting what is great. We don't allow the people to speak. We don't allow their voices to have more opportunities at the table. 20 years ago, bringing kids into the city, I actually was one of the parents who opted into the voucher program, and I went down to Washington, D.C., and I wanted the voucher program because I was in this city and I wanted a safe place for my kids. It ended up being a parochial school. It wasn't for the religion. It was for a safe space for my kids. And it was a diverse space for my kids. So, you know, how things are taking, you know, we're not allowing our school systems to improve as quickly as they can because we're not asking the people who are in the school systems. We need more younger people at the table. We need their voices immediately when they're out of school. What worked for you while you were in high school? We don't have to have these corporations come in with their ideas of how to make more profit off of it. I mean, I think that the body of people here in Cleveland have the answers to their, they have the solutions to their problems. I quickly got a job at a major institution at University Circle, and it was wonderful being there, and I learned a lot about the city, but I also learned a lot about the limits that our fine institutions allow the city of Cleveland residents to access. We have to limit the access to our public institutions by offering them 2 or 3 or 4 free days out of the year so that they can take advantage of the education that we have here. Everybody should go to these institutions. Yes, the Art Museum is free, but all of these other educational institutions should not have to have a dollar value on it for you to enjoy that education. So that's one. We used to have autonomy in our departments at some of these institutions. And then, it started becoming about the bottom dollar and how can we minimize the staff and how can we cut corners. And you end up cutting corners from people who are invested in these institutions, where people really meet people. We don't have enough people meeting people. It is all about how quickly you can get people through. When you lose that contact of asking people, everybody who was at this institution, everyone from the people who cleaned the floors, to the people who were security, to the people who were in the stores, to the people who were out in the fields, you live and breathe that institution. But when you realize that you are just a number, and a corporation comes in and says, you know what, you got to thin it out and you got to get rid of these people quick. So people who have been here for 30 years, 20 years, and they've had keys to your museum, you get them out of there within an hour. You come in there and you say, fill your belongings, put it in this box, and you are out, because we are so afraid that we're going to get sued or we're going to something, people are going to speak their mind. We are cutting out people being able to speak their mind. They wouldn't be there for 20 years if they didn't enjoy and support the institutions. I think, speaking up and speaking out, this election cycle has taught us that we better speak up and speak out, because if we think we just want change, we better watch out for the kind of change that we're asking for. And now we're going to pay the repercussions, and it is not worth it to just get us to figure out that we need to be involved so that we can make changes. So I think it was undemocratic for the Supreme Court to grant personhood to corporations, and we have to find a way to get more people just involved in politics. And I think that's the job of the council, to really educate your communities and teach them why they are voting for what they're voting. You know what we need to correct, but you also have to educate your constituency so that we can take advantage of everything that Cleveland does great already. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we have David, and then if we could have Patricia Denny up as well. She's up next after David. David, please.
Thank you. I will believe that corporations are people when Ohio executes one. I'm here representing Mentor Move to Amend. We passed our Citizens Initiative in 2014. In the words of Justice Louis Brandeis, we must make our choice. We may have a democracy, or we may have wealth concentrated in the hands of a few, but we can't have both. The role of dark money in our electoral process, money used to create a fully integrated network of programs and groups bent on altering the direction of American politics, will be the focus of my talk. Since the 1970s, dark money donors have successfully exerted influence on the political scene in an effort to reduce government regulation and taxes. However, the 2008 election results caused fear among wealthy corporate elites that the gains achieved from the 1970s would be lost. Their effort to maintain and expand those gains intensified. An agenda focused on taking over American politics was instituted to solidify their financial interests. The political nonprofits, 501c4s, are estimated to have spent more than $8 billion on this latest election, as reported by the nonpartisan Campaign Finance Institute. From the book, Dark Money by Jane Mayer, when Congress created the legal framework for social welfare groups, the 501c4s, they never envisioned that social welfare groups would become a means by which the rich would hide their political spending. Discovery of this available avenue for anonymous political donations resulted in a significant shift from donating to candidates to instead donating to nonprofits, think tanks, and private foundations, if only the donor's ideology was validated. These recently created hyper-partisan organizations introduced doubt into the areas of settled and scientific scholarship, undermined unbiased experts, and gave politicians a menu of conflicting statistics and arguments, all of which would contribute to the donor's bottom line. The strategy has been clear: minimize the role of government and maximize the role of a private economy. The late Stephen LaTourette, congressman in the 14th District, remarked about the impact of money in politics. He was a Republican, by the way. Politics is being directed by a bunch of rich people who you can count on two hands, who have an inordinate impact on the direction of government. And Mike Lofgren, a Republican and a 28-year staffer of the House and Senate Budget Committee, said, "The rich are disconnected from the well-being of the nation except as a place to extract loot." In 2010, when Citizens United was decided, wealthy increasingly used the 501c4 organizations to successfully hide themselves and the amounts they contributed. As a result, the American political scene was inundated with unlimited, untraceable cash. Again, from Dark Money, we can see that a new generation of hyper-political private nonprofit organizations and foundations, leveraging their fortunes for maximum strategic impact, largely invisible to the public, are in control of the political landscape. However, Reverend William Barber reminds us in his book, The Third Reconstruction, we are a movement of diverse citizens who have joined hands determined to reclaim democracy in the face of corporate financed extremism. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a brief announcement. First of all, we can have Marilyn Solomon up next after
Are there
Patricia?
more Cleveland residents that would
Maryland is, but you're next. You're fine.
Okay, because I'm not.
And then I'd like to make an announcement. The Burmese delegation should go to the room across the hall. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, we'll take them to the committee room or the caucus room or something, whatever. Find them a space, but they're not going to be in here.
They want to sit in on this.
Oh, well, then tell them to come back then. I guess the Burmese are coming back. They came to see Democracy Day in action. Please, Patricia. And if we get a Marilyn Solomon up as well. Oh, you won't be. Okay, please.
I will. Dave spoke about this book, Dark Money, and I would just like to read an excerpt having to do with the Kochs who had established what was in effect their own political party. This consolidation of power reflected the overall national trend of increasingly large and concentrated campaign spending by the ultra-wealthy in the post-Citizens United era. The spending, in turn, was a reflection of the growing concentration of wealth more generally in America. So as a result, the 2012 election was a tipping point of sorts. Not only was it by far the most expensive election in the country's history, it was also the first time the advent of modern campaign finance laws when outside spending groups, including super PACs and tax-exempt nonprofit groups, flush with unlimited contributions from the country's richest donors, spent more than $1 billion to influence the federal elections. And when the spending on attack ads run by nonprofits, they're allowed to be called nonprofits, was factored in, outside spending groups might well have outspent the campaigns and the political parties for the very first time. The Koch network and many of their billionaire friends, small group of people, loomed as a colossus over this new political landscape. I would highly recommend you go to your library and ask for this book. And just to put a local spin on it, unless I am not understanding things correctly about the Cavaliers owner and the billionaire Cavaliers owner needing money, it is just beyond me. I do not understand why the citizens of Cleveland should have to sacrifice for a billionaire owner. Thank you.
If we could have Ann Caruso and Lynn Alford and Bob Hansen are up next. Ann Caruso. Lynn and Bob is not speaking. So Nina McClellan. Nina, you sure we have time? Okay. Oh, I see. So then, I think last on our list, unless we've missed someone, is Rico Dancy, I believe. Rico, please.
Good afternoon. I'm a member of Deaf Grass Movement. It's a movement for people who are deaf, disabled. If we get 140 million, 88 million, our neighborhoods come first, in my respectful. Why should the taxpayers have to give us some more money, keep on giving up, to the big Mr. Gilbert could pay for itself? I don't understand why should the taxpayers have to give all this money because the Mr. Gilbert wanted to keep on getting richer after richer. He could pay for himself. If he owned all the casinos, he could do it himself. If he owned private jails in Detroit, he could do it himself. If he owned insurance company, he could do it himself. So why should we have to pay for it? Because he wants to pay for it because he want to get a deal. No. That 140 million, 88 million could go into our community. It's not a one day where I go to the community, door by door, knock by knock. Seniors are telling me, why are we spending this kind of money? I say, I want to know that too. If our mayor could do it, tell our mayor we do not want this deal. If we got to take this to the voting box, we will say no to this deal. I'm telling y'all, we are saying no to this deal. This deal is not worth it. 140 million, our kids get murdered. 9/4 in Kinsman, a child got murdered. That's what you could do with 140 million. 50's banned the house in these streets. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rico. So that concludes the hearing. We actually got through the entire list, which is fabulous. Give yourself a round of applause again for the first Democracy Day. Okay, so we're not quite done yet. Let's hold on. So
wait a minute, Academy Tavern.
Okay, so mark that. Hold on, we're going to make a note of that one. Okay. Academy Tavern. Thank you, Liz. And Councilman Cleveland is going to just go through a little bit of what happens next relative to the ordinance in the hearing. please.
Okay, again, thank you all for your participation, for coming down and being involved with this movement and bringing that to us. As required by the ordinance, we held our first Democracy Day here in Cleveland City Hall. And we gave everyone here the opportunity, every member of the public who wanted to speak, the chance to speak with respect to your feelings about the impact of corporate money on government, local, state, and federal. In terms of next steps, within a week of today's hearing, the mayor will submit a letter to our representatives in the State House of Ohio and the State Senate, and also as our U.S. congressional representatives, stating that the citizens in Cleveland voted in support of this citizens' initiative to call for an amendment to the United States Constitution, declaring that only human beings and not corporations are legal persons with constitutional rights. This public hearing will take place on a biannual basis, meaning after the second week of May following November federal elections, so that would be every 2 years. And this is, by the terms of the ordinance, set to continue through May of 2027, or until a constitutional amendment reflecting the principles that are basically set forth in this ordinance are ratified by 3/4 of our state legislatures. And with that,
we're going to have closing comments, if you like. We're going to allow some closing comments because we have a little bit of time, a few minutes.
We've got
Not
a
much.
little bit of time. Okay.
Councilman Johnson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank everyone who has come out tonight to speak about this issue. It is my hope that as we do this in the future, you will have more individuals on this side of the table here. I got delayed, and I apologize for our lateness. But there is a significant problem between the power and money and our government. It is one that requires us to continue to be heard. It is one that is being manifested with this referendum process so that the people can decide how to spend $88 million. But I also hope that more folks understand that whatever they've grown to be frustrated with and therefore feeling that their voice is not relevant, that what you guys are doing are at least beginning to show them that there is a connection between their concerns and advocacy and change. What I've heard in the community over the years is a sense of inevitability with power and what they want, and the lack of belief in their own abilities is reflected in the number of people who come out and vote, particularly in local races. So I do hope that you continue advocacy, that this day reflects the need to get folks more involved. We've seen revolutions throughout this world about people power. Obviously, this needs to be done much more here in the country as we debate people versus money. To the one gentleman who mentioned it, I believe was a gentleman, the original proposal, for example, of the contribution for the mayor's race was actually the first proposal by the mayor was $10,000. But council cut it back to $5,000. So there was even a greater attempt to do more. So I thank my colleagues for being here. I'm assuming with the TV off, that means it was not aired on TV 20.
It was recorded, though.
It was
It's recorded by the
ordinance.
required by the ordinance, yes.
So hopefully
It'll be on Channel 20, right?
and so that your messages are not just heard by the three of us, that we'll make sure, and the chair will make sure that it is aired so that the public can hear it as well, who is the most important. So thank you all, and I appreciate you being here.
Just a few comments. First of all, the topic of examining the impact on our city and state and our nation of political influence by corporate entities in big money. We heard this afternoon, and I took notes, on a vast array of issues. Most of them Actually, we started off with big pharma in some really large corporate issues, but towards the end, we really got into local issues. And they say all politics are local. So I want to, first of all, credit all of those involved. As Chris has said earlier, we didn't really say specifically the context of this hearing was a 9,000 signature petition drive. So that was really people power in terms of the efforts that went into everyone to circulate those petitions and gather those signatures. And I also want to thank those involved as well in working with council through the submissions and even to this day. It's not been completely smooth, but we're here and we just had a great showing and a great hearing. Just want to thank everyone. Continue. We're preaching to the choir. You're all fabulous in terms of your involvement in your own communities and neighborhoods. We really value you. I think that Phyllis and I, or Councilman Cleveland and I, and Councilman Johnson really value it. The other members, as I said, it will be on Channel 20, our Cleveland cable television station. We'll see what we can do to promote that and how many times we can get it on. And we'll also put links to the communications that we're doing to the others, politicians, as Councilman Cleveland mentioned. And that wraps it up for me. Councilman Cleveland, want to wrap it up for the hearing?
Okay, again, and once again, I thank you all for being here and taking the time out to participate. And if I could just say a special thank you to Greg Coleridge, Chris Stocking, Lois Romanoff, and also my own constituent, Eileen Hamilton. Eileen spoke, I don't know if she's still here, but she's my resident. She was the first person to approach me about this 2 years ago. But again, Ms. Romanoff, Mr. Stocking, Mr. Coleridge, actually sat down with us to plan this event for today. And so, again, we look forward to continuing to have the dialogue. And, it is a dialogue. And what I've learned is, people have various degrees of understanding and different perspectives based on their own experiences. And let's all remember that. Everyone, as passionate as you are, everyone is not where you are or doesn't see things quite the way you do. But the beauty in this system and the way it was designed is that, we come together, we talk, and then we build something that all of us can live with for all of our common good. And again, we thank you, and the hearing is adjourned.
For those, most of you know, the council meeting is actually in the chambers at 7. In Lois, where are people meeting?
The Academy Tavern, which is at Larchmere and 128.